Speaking on violence against women is also a moment of speaking out against it. If you have to stop something, you need to know what it is and how it works. Now, this is a difficult task while we are talking about violence, because especially if we are talking about violence against women, it is often taken for granted. Talking about something that is taken for granted is really difficult, because it often requires confronting some sort of an uncomfortable reality, or also discussing about taken for granted things may require some sort of introspection, and we all know that we are kind of resistant to introspection. Violence or acts involving physical force intended to hurt is related to violation. Violate or harm someone. To violate is a transitive verb that transfers the action from the subject, violator, to the object receiving the violence, that is someone who is being violated. So violence is something very basic to human existence, and we'll talk about that later. But for the time being, let us begin with violence against women. We can think of at least two registers, or two, it would be better to say two features of violence against women. One is identified violence and another is unidentified violence. First, there are certain acts which are recognized as violence against women, like feticide, forced abortion, infanticide, dowry violence, honor killing, genital mutilation, forced marriage. The list can be extended to our wits' end, but let us not do that. When we talk about violence against women, we refer to violent acts exclusively committed against women throughout their life cycle by individuals of any caste, class, sex, and creed. Communities and states, both in private and public spaces. So I repeat, when we talk about violence against women, we refer to violent acts exclusively committed against women by individuals, communities, and states, both in private and public spaces. Even though certain acts are identified as violence, they are often taken for granted. Violence against women is something that happens, just happens. Statistics would be useful to make this point. Second, most often violence against women remains unidentified or unrecognized. Certain acts or expressions are so commonplace, so everyday, happening everywhere, that we take them for granted. We do not question them, we do not take them seriously. These are micro events or micro actions of violence that take place without rising to the status of event. These are micro moments that remain unnoticed, leaving no historical mark as such. So let us take an instance. If you need to tame the shrew, you need to kill the cat on the first night. So this is a proverb, a common saying. I think most probably this is a Persian proverb, and which means that a failed first night would be a failure once and for all. The husband will never be able to establish his authority over the wife. This is fun. Although there is a direct reference to killing, this is fun, because it is not the killing of a woman, it is just killing a cat. When the killing is pushed to a cat, from a woman to a cat, from an identified known violence to an unidentified unknown realm of the animal, the violence disappears, evaporates, making way for fun. Feminists, they overread things. So let us forget about the dictionary reference of a cat as a person, a spiteful or angry woman. Bitch is a synonym. Forget about the cat as the goddess of fertility in China, Egypt, as in Bengal, cat as the bahon or bearer of the goddess Shoshti, a lesser god though. Forget about the long association of cat with femininity in several cultures. The dark side of the feminine, is cat-like, mysterious, independent, aggressive, seductive. That is precisely what is needed to be killed. So it is not killing as such. It is just killing the cat in the woman. So killing here is denied. Killing in this proverb is just a metaphor of control. Killing is a figurative extension of controlling woman. Controlling woman is not killing her. So the proverb is funny, and this fan sanctions the possibility of violence on the very first night. The fan somewhat normatively sanctions the establishment of the authority of the husband over the wife by forceful means. The fan sanctions the necessity of violence in marriage. It marks as if the bottom line of marriage. So we were talking about two forms of violence, identified and unidentified. We see that there is a continuity between these two forms. At any moment, an unidentified violence may take the shape of an identified violence or crime. The neglected details of our daily lives, ordinary practices typically occurring every day, involve micro moments and micro actions of violence, where women are humiliated, belittled, betrayed, forgotten, mocked at, intimidated, isolated, stalked, blamed, ghosted, gaslighted, molested, raped, mutilated, and killed. And when I say all this in the same breath, I utter the habitual and the criminal together. This is intentional to underscore the fact that the boundaries between the habitual and criminal offense get blurred. As activists or feminists, we often have to deal with this in an ad hoc manner. Sometimes it is a choice or lack of training. But many a times it is a sheer desperation to do something immediately. We can no longer bear the situations of repression, of desocialization, of desymbolization, of inferiority. We can no longer tolerate violence. Often, in these moments of desperation, there remains a lack of effort to think conceptually. We do not think of violence in abstract terms. While in our desperate efforts of preventing the recurrence of crime through legal and reformative means, we presume violence as something commonsensical. We presume violence as something repeatable. When violence against women is considered as a mere juridical question, it appears as a common, repeatable phenomenon. And here we are actually presupposing the possibility of repetition of violence against women. This is not a stupid gesture undermining the significance of law. This is rather to think of the limitations of law. Law operates after a crime has been committed. There is a common assumption that an exemplary punishment may create fear in the minds of the potential offenders, which can deter them from committing crimes. Capital punishment is a problematic issue. We are not going into that right at this moment, but is it really that fear of punishment would stop violence against women when most of the violence against women remain unidentified? While impending the possibilities of recurrence of violence through legal and reformative means and attain a rightful place for the woman is absolutely necessary, there is yet another very urgent task. This is the task to transform the society. so as to eliminate the possibilities of violence against women. The task indeed is radical in nature, and it would require some radical modes of intervention. Let us begin with a particular move. Let us problematize the commonsensical, taken for granted every day. As I was saying, let us comprehend what are the manifold aspects of violence against women, and let us understand the logic of their functioning. Let us give it a thought. We were talking about everyday and taken for granted nature of violence against women. We can derive another aspect from these two features. This is denial. Of course, there are several other features or aspects related to violence, but we are not talking about that right at this moment. Let us take rape as an instance of denial. Leaving aside marital rape, rape within the family, rape of the working class women, sex worker, Dalit women, mentally or physically challenged women, trans women, promiscuous women, women practicing BDSM or aggressive sex are not even considered as violent. It is not considered as rape. This is how the stereotypical or the dominant mode of thought works. Either to avoid defamation or further offenses, often the confirmed or recognized rapes are not formally registered. Also, some victims may return to the perpetrator after the act has done to reduce the risk of being raped again, or because they want to forget the abuse and produce kind of a semblance of normality, a semblance of order. So, rape is often considered as normal, as almost a habitual crime of men. And that is why the attire, the moral character of the victim gets so significance. So people keep asking the time and area of her movement. Was it at late night, a deserted place? What was she doing there? Was she intoxicated? Under critical scrutiny, every day loses its presupposed taken for granted nature. And if it is not taken for granted, it is not everyday anymore. What it is then? How does it look like? A critical scrutiny reveals that the non-events of everyday life almost always are characterized by patterns of repetition, are almost always in continuity with the ideological institutional structures of the social. Violence against women is grounded on the ideological structure of misogyny and the institutional structure of patriarchy. Misogyny is an attitude of hatred towards women of any age just because they are women. And it is a primary source of male hostility or hypermasculine attitudes. It functions as a system, a belief system, or as an ideology that has accompanied the patriarchal societies for thousands of years and continues to place women in the position, in a subordinate position, in a parasitic position, with limited access to power and decision making. The general misogynist character of our society is widely manifested, ranging from simple jokes to pornography, the implicit acceptability of rape and other forms of violence against women in the society at large. So, gender role socialization imparts misogynistic attitudes in little boys. The marking of a man requires the repudiation of everything feminine. The rejection of girlish behavior is the first expression of misogyny, soon to be fairly embedded in his adult male gender role. Though common in men, misogyny also exists in and is practiced by women against other women, or even against themselves. Culturally sanctioned self-loathing, right? So misogyny is ideological in nature and it works through a structure of denial. There is yet another fundamental denial of violence, very basic to human existence. This again is structurally linked to the violence against women. The human is defined in terms of its difference from the animal. The human has reduced the multiplicity of animal life by grouping all under a singular category, animal. This is a move of denial of the animalness in human beings, a devaluation of whatever is there, whatever animal is there in the human. So this separation, fundamentally differentiating what is human from what is animal, justifies or naturalizes the sovereignty or mastery of man over nature. We can be human only insofar as we are utterly cleansed of animality, particularly cleansed of what is animal in us. How is the exclusion, degradation, annihilation of the animal in human made possible? One way of doing this is definitely by defining animals in terms of instincts and differentiating instinctual animals from rational human beings. And in this narrative, violence is thought of something as instinctual, as instinctive violence is considered beastly, subhuman. So it is through the denial of violence that human rationality can be instituted. In a very similar vein, the man is differentiated from the woman. While the man is rational, the woman is irrational, emotional, instinctual. And so the woman is an inferior being, lesser human. So who is this human that we are referring to? We must remember that the universal humanity is constructed in the model of man. The man-woman distinction is similar to a number of other distinctions that are often treated as paired concepts or binaries, like nature, culture, public, private, emotion, reason, humanities, science, immature, matured, infant, adult, ignorant, enlightened, body, mind, victimized, empowered, good, bad, so on and so forth. Most often, the second of each of the pair is considered to be superior or more powerful or more developed. The woman symbolize the other side of the binary, that unlike the original, authentic and superior, is secondary, derivative and even parasitic. She is a non-being, as she is not enough a human. The rational human harnesses nature, masters the animal, deploys the machine and colonizes his racial other, violently placing everything at his disposal. And this has a logical continuity with the way man rules over the woman. The man rules over the woman by means of violence. There is a kind of inevitability in this structural or originary sense of violence. Violence is pervasive in all sorts of relationships with the man with his other. It is impossible to eliminate all violence whatsoever without eliminating all relations to the other, which would again turn to a worse violence. So the acceptance of the inevitability of violence is actually not a justification of violence. Rather, it is a political move towards a responsibility to the other, respecting the other and striving for least violence possible. I would just end saying that the denial of this structural originary violence will impede the political move against it.